parents just need to check in with their kids. They need to ask them more than just, how was your day? Because kids at that age, and sometimes at any age as they're developing, don't understand how to explain what they went through throughout the day.
Welcome to Fatherhood Voices, breaking the toxic cycle. Dive in as real dads bear all, the mess-ups, make-ups, and every heartfelt moment in between. It's raw, it's real, and it might just change the way you see family.
Welcome to another episode of Fatherhood Voices, episode 62. I think I got it right this time. So today we're going to talk about a topic that is pretty controversial. It's something that you may have experienced, something your children may have experienced, or something that may be happening right now. Does that make sense? It doesn't matter. It's the topic of bullying. And with me, I have my sidekick, daughter.
Chick, what?
Alyssa. So I'm here to discuss this topic because this is near and dear to my heart, as it is to yours. And I know we've had some conversations over the years, but especially over the last couple of weeks to just really start to talk about the topic of bullying and how it shows up. So we're going to have an interesting conversation today. And you get two perspectives, from a parent, a father, and also someone that experienced bullying, and also your perspective of experiencing bullying and then how we showed up, didn't show up, what maybe could have been avoided and so forth. So Alyssa, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm ready to dive into this topic. Definitely something that I am passionate about because I've had personal experience, and I want to bring awareness to parents on how to help their kids through this, or even better, if they're able to prevent it happening altogether.
Okay, and when people talk about bullying, is bullying physical? Is it verbal? Is it psychological? Is it, what is true bullying? And where do we draw the line on what's just mischievous behavior and kids just acting out and being silly, or, just that picking on someone? And is picking on well, here's a question. Is picking on someone bullying?
I think it'd be considered bullying if they're making fun of them, or if they're doing it in a non-lighthearted way that makes the child feel, or just the person feel, uncomfortable or shamed in any way. Then I think that would be considered bullying. And we also need to be careful when we talk about kids just being silly or kids just being kids, because sometimes what happens is a lot of people chalk it up to kids being kids when really there is some bullying going on there. It's not just kids being kids. It is actually more aggressive behavior in the making fun of somebody, in the being aggressive towards them, or in the picking out the insecurities that that person may or may not already have.
When psychologists talk about bullying, they talk about aggressive behavior that happens over and over again. So it's a pattern. And bullying isn't just physical, but it's verbal. It's the taunting. And, a new dynamic that's even come into play is something that I didn't experience when I was growing up, was social media bullying and how that comes in play. And what do you do? What do you do when your child's being bullied? But, before we even go to that, that's a question I'm going to put out there for you to think about, the audience to think about as we start to dive into this. Because I'm going to add in a twist that we didn't talk about. The first is bullying that your child is experiencing. But what about workplace bullying? Because that's a whole nother dynamic to add to the twist. So, ladies and gentlemen, not only is it going to be bullying about just your children, but are you being bullied in the workplace? And I'm going to share some examples of something like that going on, and offer some resources, or just a way to be able to, one, recognize, and then also start to come up with a process to minimize that or get help. So, and then I'm going to share a story of something happened just in the last couple of days with someone that actually reached out because of bullying. And this is what kind of sparked this whole conversation. So, were you ever bullied as a child? I mean, I know the answer, but does the audience know the answer?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
I actually think it started in preschool,
In
if I'm being
preschool.
totally honest.
Well,
You
what does
know,
bullying look like in preschool? Does that even make sense?
well, yes, it does. It's
Okay.
valid and it
I'm,
happens.
you know.
But with the preschool, it was because there were another group of little girls who didn't want me to
No,
play
those are my crayons. You can't have them.
No,
That's my finger paint. Stop.
no, it was more of
Your happy
the
face is happier than
catty.
mine. No? Okay.
It was more of the cattiness that started in preschool. It was that I wanted to be friends with this one girl who was really nice, and there were other girls that wanted to be friends with her, and I started to feel outcasted because they wanted to play with her and would start to single me out. So it's things like that. That is bullying. That's the type of bullying that I had first dealt with.
So what you're telling me is that you started to experience bullying in preschool.
Hmm.
Okay, so you're in preschool, you're 5 years old. Do you even know what bullying is at that time?
No, I just know that I'm sad because these girls are not. They're blocking this relationship, even though I didn't realize it was a relationship, or this friendship from even happening with this other girl. And they're getting in the way and they're purposely taking her away from me and asking her, hey, come play over here with us. But, I'm not allowed to join. So I may not know what it is, but I'm experiencing something that makes me unhappy or that I don't understand.
You bring up a very valid point because that happens a lot with small children. Sometimes they, I don't want to say get possessive, but they get, what's the word I'm looking for? Controlling over their friends. Oh, don't play with her. Come play with me. It's jealousy that kicks in. And, as I'm starting to think about this, if bullying starts even in preschool, if you've experienced that and then now recognize it later on in life, what could we have done as your parents what questions could we have asked, or how could we have identified it? And did we identify it, or is it something you just it surfaced later on in life and you realize like, oh my gosh, when I'm thinking about bullying, it started earlier?
I didn't recognize it fully as bullying, but I think mom was aware of it, that I wasn't I believe that there was a conversation where I mentioned something
She didn't
about
want to go and catch a case,
no,
beat
no.
down another mother.
Oh my gosh. No, I remember bringing it up or something about it because she was very much more aware of what was going on in school. But at that time, I didn't have the words to express it or to fully explain what was going on and how I was feeling. So parents just need to check in with their kids. They need to ask them more than just, how was your day? Because kids at that age, and sometimes at any age as they're developing, don't understand how to explain what they went through throughout the day. So if you go and you ask your kid, how was your day? And they say, fine, okay, well, don't just leave it at that. If it's fine, it's okay. That means it wasn't good, it wasn't great. That could mean that there's some underlying sadness or depression or, anger or something that's going on. I think parents need to investigate and ask deeper questions like, what was your best part of the day? What was the hardest part of the day? What would you have changed today? Or how did you feel when you were at school today? To start identifying those emotions, those underlying events that kids may not know how to tell or don't feel like they're significant or worthy of even telling their parents about.
So it's open-ended questions. It's asking them open-ended questions and not being so quick to, what I've come to realize is a lot of parents just go through the motions almost like habit. It's like, oh, how was your day? Not even listening. Oh, what'd you do? But it's just like they feel like they just need to check in. And you may catch some cue points. Oh, I felt sad today. Okay, well, tomorrow you'll have a better day. But why did you feel sad? And so I really like what you're saying because parents need to ask these open-ended questions and dive deeper. It's almost like peeling through the layers of the onion to get to the bottom, because if as a parent you ask surface level questions and allow the answers to stick with your children at a young age, that's going to continue to grow as they get into elementary school and even junior high school. So to have that connection and bond, it's almost like you lose that trust, you lose that safe space that your child has to be able to come to you when something's bothering them. So I really like that perspective that you're taking. And I guess my next question would be, when should a parent get involved? And then I'm just right now, we're just talking about at preschool, kindergarten. We're not even talking about, going into elementary school or junior high school, but because this is something that happens, as we become more aware and identified it, that's a common practice, something that happens. It's a pattern, in preschool and kindergarten. When should a parent get involved? If they now unraveled and identified that there's something going on, because now you're dealing with very small children that are still trying to process right from wrong, and their patterns, their habits, their behavior is a reflection of how they're being raised, how their parents are showing up. And it might not even be the parents. They could be living with grandparents or aunts, uncles, or siblings. So what's okay and what's not okay? When is it okay for the parent to step in and now make this a bigger issue?
Sorry, I didn't prepare that. Hold on. When the child is acting out, when they are being aggressive, maybe when they weren't before, towards people, towards siblings, towards authority figures, or even other children, when there's any type of resistance to go to school, those are always good indicators. But the bottom line being that you know your child the best. Or if you're paying attention, you should know your child the best. And you should know when something is off with your child, especially when there's any acting out that doesn't have a reason that's constantly coming up, or if there's any type of shift when they're going to school or any refusal of going to school. Those are definitely good indicators of something that's going on.
One of the things that I think is something that can be a tool utilized by parents is when they're talking to their young children is to record it and document it. So, because it's, when you record a child and they're in that moment and they're in that emotion and you can see it, you can feel it, you can hear it, it's more impactful if they need to take it to the teacher or a principal or someone. Versus if you go and say, I had a talk with my son or daughter and they were being bullied. It loses a lot of the if that makes sense. So being able to see the child kind of have that meltdown and see the sadness, see the hurt, see the pain, I know that will make a bigger impact if that needs to be moved up the chain, so to speak. One of the things that is important for a parent is to teach your children to be assertive when bullying happens. So not to go on the attack, but just to be able to hold your ground and let them know, like, hey, it's not okay.
So, I know you
Don't.
mentioned something about being assertive and not attacking. So, can we address what you said in the last podcast
Oh, no.
about?
No, I think as you get a little bit older that, if you're being bullied, you should punch someone in the nose. So,
Okay, well,
but we won't go there yet because
we're not just
we're
going to directly just go and
in
punch
preschool
somebody
and
in the nose.
elementary. I don't advocate that you punch your bully in the nose yet, but we'll get to that. And yes, it's a little
Oh my God.
controversial. We'll get there, but in preschool and kindergarten, we should try to mediate it, and that's where you get your parents involved. But we'll get to that. Yeah. But you wanted to say? You wanted to add
Nothing.
on?
That's just what I want. You need to correct and recant,
I need to recant? No, I'm not
or
going to
just
recant.
like
No, I'm not going to recant.
like if they touch you, then but like advocating bullying that could come back to bite you in the brand's ass.
You can come bite whoever the fuck's ass it wants. This is my voice, and this is my authenticity of how I feel about bullying because I'm so passionate about it. And if people don't like it, they can choose their way. But I'm just telling you my feelings on it.
Okay, we will resume.
No, we didn't. We never stopped. We never stopped.
No, we're resuming.
So we've kind of talked now about preschool and preschool and kindergarten. But now children, they go into elementary school and bullying becomes a bigger issue because now kids are formulating groups and different circles of friends. And now you have the dynamics of recesses and lunches and so forth. So, which all add layers and dynamics to the potential of bullying because there's more free time because, the classroom is structured time. And I'm sure there's bullying that happens in the classroom, but there's more awareness because you have a teacher in the classroom. Sometimes you have aides in there. But now you get in elementary school and you usually have, I believe it's two breaks, like two recesses, and then you have a lunch, and then you have like pick up before school and after school. So there's just a lot more free time where kids are able to um, interact with each other, and then it does create opportunities for bullying. How do we navigate? So you said you were bullied in elementary school, so that was your first experience with it. But what did elementary school look like for you that you experienced bullying?
Same thing, girls being catty, picking on me. I honestly don't remember too much because I think I blocked some out. I think my mom could speak more to that since she was the one who had to hear all the stories and had been basically the front line of getting involved. Of course, because we couldn't get dad involved right away because that might have went straight up to confrontational, who you were at the time. But I think that had to do a lot with my Tourette's because I was undiagnosed with Tourette syndrome. And it got the attention of kids, and they started to become my bullies because they didn't understand that I had these, at that point, what I referred to them was habits. And I didn't know how to control them. I didn't understand where they came from. They would just happen. Um,
So can you recall a specific incident where you were bullied in elementary school and how that made you feel?
okay, let me choose through them.
There's
Um,
that many?
there is that
You're just
many.
going through a
There
catalog
is that
of a
many from
list?
different bullies,
Different bullies.
from different instances with the same bullies. I mean, I can remember a pair of two sisters that used to just pick on me. One that was the worse than the other, that were twins. And I mean, this goes back to like third grade. Unfortunately, we had a mixed class between third and fourth graders, and they would continue to pick on me and I guess gaslight me. At that time, I didn't know what that meant, but now I can identify it. And they would just continue to, for whatever reason, outcast me, include me to outcast me, and just pick on me. And then when I would be upset about it, they would try to apologize and win me back over just to do the same thing. So it was almost like a really toxic, abusive relationship, but in a friendship just from early on. I've also had bullies. I've also had a boy that would pick on me because of my tics when they would come out during school. And until I was able to identify what it was, and I stood up to him and said that, it's something I can't control, it's this disorder that I have, he actually did have empathy and was like, oh, I'm sorry.
Ticks like tick, tick, tick. No?
No,
That's not.
don't do
Okay. Okay. Because I have Tourette's too, so I can make fun of it. It's not funny, but being undiagnosed was, definitely caused some struggle for you. I can see that there's still some pain there, so I'm gonna minimize the joking.
Well, it's a trigger because the frustration comes from going so long without being diagnosed and your pushback on not allowing me to be diagnosed.
Yeah, I remember those times. I grew up with Tourette's, not even knowing I have Tourette's. Funny story. Well, I don't think it's funny, but I have to just laugh now. I developed tics at a very early age, and I would make some tics with my throat and some movements and so forth. And I remember I would get punished for. They say, "Stop doing that. You need to stop. It's a bad habit, and you need to stop that." And I also remember a time. So that was one part of it. So I kind of feel like my mom was bullying me.
Well, you
Yeah.
mentioned habit, and I got triggered because that's the language that I was given when I had these habits, and now I think I understand where it came from. It came
Yeah.
from you.
Your fucking grandmother. It came from your fucking
Oh my God.
grandmother. Not from me. It came from your fucking grandmother, your aunts and uncles, former aunts and uncles.
Well, I guess that's just goes to show what the impact of words or labels or the immediate dismissal from parents or just authority figures around you, that it traveled through the generations. It went from you that went to me.
It's, I remember specifically being in, I want to say it was third grade. And I was having these ticks. Well, now we can identify them as ticks. Before, it was just a bad habit that they were trying to get me to stop. And I remember I wanted to learn to play the guitar, la 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 la, And so one of the ways they bribed me was they said, "Okay, if you stop doing these bad habits, then we'll buy you the guitar." And so
Did you get the guitar?
I did, but I would like hold it, but it hurt.
So you suppress them. Because you can. For those that don't know about Tourette's syndrome, you can suppress your tics. However, when you suppress them, they will find a way out. So,
Gonna trigger me. But it made me explosive. Not real. Now, wow. I'm having to download it. So I got this guitar, and I would hide my tics around them. And I would let them out when they went around.
so I guess I just want to speak to the parents who are not sure if you're not sure if your child has Tourette's or they're showing these, I guess, repetitive motions or habits, as we used to refer to it, just to do some investigation and not to be afraid to take your child to a doctor or just to bring it to their attention, because it's better if they do get diagnosed versus not understanding. Because with Tourette's or something like Asperger's, which is similar but it's not the same, these do highly impact your emotions, your impulsivity, your aggression, and it is a lot more useful to have the tools, the knowledge, and be able to connect with those resources if they do. Because if you're just told that these are habits and you shame them, they're going to start suppressing them, or it could bring forth more behaviors that are more explosive.
This episode is sponsored by Aloha Imports, the sprays that make your worst-smelling secrets disappear. Listen, I love people, but I don't love their shoes or their oops, I ate a burrito bathroom breaks. And I really don't love pretending I don't smell it. That's why I keep Aloha Imports products in the house, in my car, honestly, probably in every bag I own. They've got Sweet Feet for foot funk, Shoe Fly for that one pesky fly, Smoke Off for smoke clouds that linger like your last situationship, and Crapper Zapper for the bathroom situation. You know the one. Aloha Imports doesn't cover it up with flowers and lies. They end it, silently, like a tropical ninja with a vendetta. So if you live with roommates, pets, or anyone who eats food and then, processes that food, you need this. Go to alohaimports.com, stock up, and enjoy living in a house that doesn't smell like a regret.
Let's shift this conversation back to bullying.
Okay.
Because this was a cause of your bullying, and I'm starting to have some recollections. So, and I don't mean shift this like I'm going to stop talking about it, but this is definitely going to be a whole another episode to definitely dive deeper into it, because I think this is something that needs to be talked about.
You don't want to go through it and then do like a part 1, part 2 of like the ages, like start with.
We can do. I mean,
or
like
do you
I said,
want to go into it, or do you want to do it?
No,
because he can cut out my monologue, and we can just.
No, we're not cutting out any monologue. This is all. This is all rolling.
No, he will edit it.
No, we're not editing it.
Saying,
we're just rolling through it. I'm just saying.
What minutes are we at, Christian?
We're at 25 minutes. We're not cutting it. This is
powerful. We weren't supposed to do a full podcast.
Oh, we're supposed to do a full podcast.
Oh, I mean, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, then.
It's just you're shifting me different way. Like you brought out the workplace, and I was like, "What? We're doing workplace? That's not what we."
I thought we were doing a whole podcast. So what are we doing today?
Yeah, we can do a whole podcast.
No, we don't have to do a whole podcast.
What is the workplace bullying? Yeah, you pulled that like out of pocket, and I was like, "What's workplace?" Okay, it's fine. Just go ahead. We'll keep going since we're only at 25.
Well, we'll shut it down at 30 minutes. So, ladies and gentlemen, so this is just a modified podcast today of.
No, it's not. It's fine. They'll be edited. Just keep going. Okay, so
you're being
go
a bully.
Back to the. I'm not being a bully.
You're being a fucking bully.
Don't be an asshole. I'm not being a bully.
Oh, I want to say something. Thank goodness for giving me the patience to fight it.
Okay, so just start up from, okay, so you're talking about Tourette's, you got triggered, and then
We're not cutting it. Don't start it out.
Yes, we
Why
are.
does she
Okay,
think
whatever.
we're
I'll let you
cutting
think whatever you're thinking.
So, continuing on, as we get into elementary school, and how should parents interact with the schools? How should they interact with the schools to start to address the whole dynamic around bullying? Because I know from a perspective of a father, and because I'm so passionate about it and it really triggers me, I go on the offensive. I go on the offensive and I want to nip it in the bud. I want to make sure that it's addressed and it's dealt with, and the people that are doing it, that they stop, or that there's consequences. And I know schools a lot of time, and it really, it really depends on the principal. It really depends on the administration on how they enforce bullying, because all schools have anti-bullying bullying policies and so forth, but it's left up to the letter or the spirit of the law of each administration in the school to kind of decide how they enforce it. And some are more lax, and yet some are more just by the letter of the law, and they're strict with the enforcement. So,
Oh, I didn't know that. I
oh,
didn't know that it was left up to the school themselves.
oh, absolutely. And I'm sure there's some districts where they've taken that. Like, I actually just ran across an article where, you know what? Bullying should be mandated reporting, like sexual abuse. I fucking really think bullying should be
Or like
mandated.
physical abuse.
Absolutely. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, because bullying is just it's another form of abuse. And sometimes it's physical, sometimes psychological, sometimes emotional. But I really think that there should be an initiative to make bullying something that's mandated reporting, because I saw that some school districts have mandated reporting when there's bullying, when a teacher, a neonate, a kitchen helper, anybody employed by the school that works around kids, if they see an incident of bullying, or if a child comes up to them, some school districts mandate that you report it up the chain.
Oh.
And as I was stumbled onto that, and as we're talking, and it's triggering us both, because not only have we both experienced bullying, but I'm sure a lot of other people have. I think that there should be an initiative, and I'm not big on a lot of laws and so forth, but bullying should be mandated reporting, because it's that serious.
No, I do agree with that, because they can have lifelong effects, especially if you are subjected to bullying your entire school career. I don't think that people who are bullied or people who bully realize the scars that it leaves, just because you may not be able to see what happened, or that person seems like they grew into a functioning adult, what they went through and what they're suppressing and why they are the way that they are. I'll give you an example. I just discovered this. This was actually in a conversation that we had last night, that the bathroom is my sanctuary. That even as an adult, when I feel uncomfortable, or I have some time, or I just don't want to be around people, I will go to the bathroom. And I will sit in there and I'll scroll on my phone. Or maybe I'll just be standing there, but I can lock myself in a stall. I can just be with me, because when I was younger and throughout my school career, I was subjected to bullying, and part of my safe haven was the bathroom, because it was the one place that I could try to get away. Although that wasn't always the case, because like when I was in elementary school, those girls would follow me to the bathroom and, try to get me to give them some type of acceptance of forgiveness, because this was an ongoing thing. But what I found to discover is that the bathroom was my sanctuary. And I mean, I hear stories all the time about kids who ate lunch in the bathroom. And it's just something that for some people, you just feel like you need to shut the world out, or you just need a moment to yourself, or somewhere where the outside world can't get to you.
I love that phrase, the bathroom sanctuary. And I honestly really think we need to create a best practices PDF around that, the bathroom sanctuary, because I got a call on Sunday from someone, and they shared that they had this download. They were going through some stuff, and then realized that in seventh and eighth grade, they spent their lunches in the bathroom, and it was their safe haven because they used to get bullied. And they had so much anger and resentment towards their mother, their father, their grandmother, and so forth. But in talking to this individual, what came out was that there's really nothing they could have done at that moment in time in the eyes of him, because a lot of times when your parents get involved, sometimes it can make things worse. Sometimes it can take the level of bullying up. So it's trying to find that balance. I almost think that as a parent, once you open up that door and make the school officials aware of it, you have to see it all the way through. Like once that door opens, it's going to be a never-ending cycle, because it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. But it's being on the offensive. It's keeping that pressure on it. It's pushing, being on the attack. And I don't mean physically yet, but I mean being on the offensive and making sure that you're holding the school accountable. You're holding the teacher accountable. You're holding the people that monitor the breaks and lunches accountable. That you're holding the counselors accountable. You're holding the vice principal and the principal, whatever their administration structure is, that you're holding them accountable, and be ready to, if the school's not doing anything about it, to take it to the district. If district's not going to do anything about it, then take it to the state. But to definitely keep that pressure on, to let it known that bullying is not okay, and you're not going to put up with it. I just seen a news. I just seen something on the news about something a couple of weeks where in Arizona, and maybe we'll find that clip, but a father had reported bullying on his daughter, and they just kind of dismissed it. And he showed up to pick her up 2 weeks ago, and these two bullies, he had a daughter. These two girls had beat his daughter and left her there. So he was angry and upset. And so what he did was he took matters into his own hand, and he went and made signs and would stand outside the school and say, "My daughter's been bullied. Have your kids been, bullied?" and so forth. And he wanted to create awareness. So his tact was different. It was to create awareness around it, but it got people talking, and people started coming up to him and saying, "You know what? My children's going through the same thing." So what before wasn't taken seriously and it was just kind of dismissed, it's now become a bigger issue, not only in that school, but in that district, in that city, in that town, in that county.
Okay, so you touched on something that really triggered me, because I'm really passionate about this, and honestly, that pisses me off. The only reason why bullying would get worse is if there is a lack of community around it. So if the teachers don't give a damn, if the parents don't give a damn, if the parents are not willing to hold their children accountable for what they're doing and dismiss the behavior that has been confirmed, possibly recorded, because kids have cameras everywhere now, that's the problem. You cannot rely on the schools. You cannot rely on the administration. It's time for parents to take bullying into their own hands. And that means, first, you need to find out what your school's policy on bullying is. What is it? And ask them. You need to pressure the school to give you answers first and foremost before day one of your kid being in that school. You need to find out what their policy is, and you need to ask them how they enforce it. And they might not have an answer for you. And if they don't, you should be very concerned. The next thing is PTAs. Are PTAs talking about this? Because you want to be involved, and your parents, and you fundraise, but what are you doing about bullying? These are your children. Are you doing fundraisers about anti-bullying? Are you checking in with your kids? Are you encouraging your kids to make friends with other kids? And are parents training their kids, or not training, but basically training them for resilience? Are you teaching them to help out somebody who's being bullied, to befriend them? Are you teaching them to say something? Are you creating a safe environment that's non-judgmental for them to be able to come and talk about these things? It's time for parents to step up, and it's time for school administration to step up and to start putting the pressure on them, because this is ridiculous. And I'm getting sick and tired of hearing the cases of children committing suicide, and that age is just dropping and dropping. And I'm trying to understand what the hell is going on that this is not being dealt with, because you cannot tell me that there are no signs. Everybody missed the signs? You're telling me every single person missed the signs? Because I'm going to tell you right now, that is bullshit. There is no way that every single person missed the signs. The parents didn't know. Okay, that's fair. Maybe the parents, they work, they've got other siblings, they've got a lot of stuff going on. But the teachers didn't see anything? The children around didn't see anything? No, absolutely not. That is unforgivable.
So here are some of the signs. I'm glad you brought that up, because here are some of the signs that parents should, not only parents, but like you said, teachers, people should be aware of. Social withdrawal, self-harming behavior, school refusal, a sudden drop in grades, a talk of hopelessness or suicide. Those are signs that can't be ignored. Those are signs that happen if you're not, if you are too busy in your life that you're not paying attention to what your kids are doing or what your students are doing. There's a problem. You know, just as we're talking about this, you made me think of two things that I would like to put out to our audience. The first is I would like us to create a anti-social bullying initiative. Some resources that we can create, but not just from our perspective, but I want to involve the audience too that have experienced bullying or who have dealt with the issues with the schools and their children being bullied. And what input can they give? Because I want to create some type of initiative, some type of resources that are real. That's not just very vague and generic and it's universal. No, I want to make it relevant and something that can be used. And I'm just going to say right now in Southern California, because Southern California is different dynamic than Northern California. We're different than Arizona. We're different than other states. So, but we can use this as a foundation. But I want to get the input from what people in Southern California have experienced. And I want to get their input so that we can craft something that we can now create this initiative that we can take into the schools, that we can give to the PTAs, that we can give to the school administrators and say, here's a working document or here's a working program that you can put in place. That's not going to punch anybody in the face, okay, yet.
No, we're
that'll
not.
be probably version 2.0.
Look, I'm all for self-defense, but we're not going straight for the physical contact. Although, let's be mindful of something, though. If you do not address bullying, can you actually blame the victim for physical contact? Because I'm going to debunk that right now, and I'm going to say no. Because a child can only handle so much until they finally break, and that's when you start getting the aggressive, explosive behaviors, because eventually you just have too much.
You know what I think the biggest crock of bullshit is that happens in schools? Is when the victim of bullying gets suspended along with the bullies.
Oh, that's bullshit.
You know, that happens.
I know that was something that I dealt with growing up, but the difference between my parents and someone else's parents is that you always told me that I better fight back. Now, it wasn't done in the best way. Your words weren't crafted in the most conscientious way. It was, you better win that fight. You better not, so that did put a pressure on me that just kind of made me not even want to get involved in any type of physical contact because I had that additional fear. But when it's presented the right way, that's the same way that I'd raise my kids, is that if they touch you, you are all well and yours to be able to defend yourself, and you will not get in trouble. If you get suspended, we're going to have an issue and the school's going to have to deal with me, and we're going to Disneyland that week.
No, absolutely. In talking about this, and I remember we had a very emotional conversation last night, and I had shared with you and then you shared with me, but there was something that showed up on my social media feed, and it was back east, and there was a group, a motorcycle group, and it was this whole big anti-bullying initiative. So if your child's bullied, you reach out to them, and they show up in the dozens, a bunch of guys from these motorcycle groups, and they just stand in unison and in alliance with that victim, that's not going to happen anymore because you have a bunch of uncles now, uncles and aunts to protect you. And that inspired this conversation last night that I said, you know what, we're going to reach out to them, and we're going to see how they're crafted that, and then we're going to do that here. So I reached out to a very good, one of my spiritual brothers last night that belongs to a motorcycle group. And I said, hey, um, you think you could get your brothers to want to jump on board with this? And he says, absolutely. Absolutely. So, if any of you out there that are watching that are from a motorcycle club or even a car club and are definitely against bullying and so forth and want to be a part of this, then reach out to us, because I would like to see different chapters or groups formed where we're just standing in lines with victims. And if a parent feels like the school isn't doing anything, their voice isn't being heard, they can reach out. And then imagine 50 or 100 motorcycles showing up at the school and standing in unison to let them know that this is not going to be swept under the rug, but bullying is not going to continue to happen, because they're going to raise hell. And it's going to be a different type of hell. It's not going to be through violence. It's not going to be through, but it's going to be through a silent protest of just showing up in unity, showing up in force. I think if anything's going to get the message, if anything's going to get the conversation going, if any action is going to happen, when they're not acting on it, it's going to be something like this. When a community stands in unison and it gets the attention. Oh my gosh, what are all these motorcycles doing here? Or even, not even just motorcycles. What about all these men that are just showing up, all in unison with the same shirt? So,
well, men and women.
And women, yeah.
I think that this is something that needs to be carefully crafted. And I'd be very interested to get the parents' feedback on this, of what level of comfortability is there with this, because this is something that we have to be very mindful and careful with, especially when we're bringing strangers onto a school campus. And that's going to require background. That's going to require...
we don't need them on the campus. We just need to show up and drop them off. Actually, right in front. Freaking pull up and take up all...
That's where the careful crafting comes from, of what is a level of comfortability, but what do the parents need? What do they want to see with their kids?
They want support. They want support. I want to get wrapped up in the dynamics of all this bullshit red tape, because the red tape's going to stop us. And I get what you're saying, and you're weighing on the side of caution. But I'm saying, if, you guys are older now, and we've already gone through that, and we made our mistakes along the way. But just as an example, your niece, she's going to be going into preschool and kindergarten in the next 2 years. And so there's going to be potential that this could become an issue. And if the school's not reacting, of course, I'm going to want to take a different tack. But I have no problem calling up 30 or 40 of my most unruly looking friends to show up outside the parking lot and let them know, like, this is an issue that's not going to be swept under the rug. It's a protest in silence, to let them know. If that means every day we mess up the drop-off line and the pickup line, because this is a silent protest to let you know that this needs to stop, this needs to be addressed, then I'm all for it. Fuck the red tape. Let's do it.
Yep, time to put the pressure on the schools.
Absolutely. Time to put the pressure on the parents also of the kids that are bullies. Because that's something we're not talking about. We're talking about...
Wait, what? Can you help me guide what's going on?
There's a whole thing of dealing with the situation of bullies, but what about the parents who are contributing to the kids being bullies? Because maybe they're telling their kids to show up and be tough, but in turn, what's happening is the kids are showing up as bullies, and the parents are allowing it. That's something that needs to be addressed too. It's that corrective behavior. Now, I know that's a whole different dynamic. It's a whole different shift, because now we're not just dealing with the aggressor, which is the children, which there's more, I want to say there's more control that you have when they're children, because you have, suspensions, and, you can have, detentions and so forth. So the school does have some tools and resources, but what about, just got me unraveled, frazzled with this. What about when the parents are condoning the behavior? Because I know parents that have condoned the behavior of their little asshole kids. And yes, I said it, little asshole kids. And how do we start to change that culture to let it know that we're not going to tolerate it? Because I remember knocking on a couple doors when you guys were younger and wanting to beat the shit out of some fathers because they allowed this to happen. And right or wrong, it doesn't matter. When you mess with my girls, that's it. Gloves came off. And if it wasn't going to get corrected at the school, which it didn't, then it was going to get corrected in the streets.
Well, even a whole nother thing that could be talked about is lack of the lack of responsibilities that schools like to take when it's something that doesn't happen on campus or during school hours, or if it's at a school function that's off of the campus or social media. Because I was in the early years of the development of social media. And yes, there were bullies on social media too. I definitely know what it feels like to have girls talk about you or to have a bully, a school bully on social media. But when it's not addressed, don't think that the bullying's not following you home now, especially as social media has gotten even more impactful. It's more popular and there are more kids on there.
It's as we start to wind this down, it's funny that you mentioned that, because one of the things that comes up is, what about when the bullying happens offsite? A sleepover, a get together, a birthday party, and then the bullying happens, and then it spills over into the school, and the school's like, well, because it happened off campus, that's something between the parents, but then it continues, at school. So that's a whole nother dynamic. And the unfortunate thing is, we haven't even got into really junior high school and high school, because that's a whole nother dynamic. But I want to read something you prepared, just as final advice for parents. And I think this is important because we just scratched basically preschool, kindergarten, and elementary school. We're not going to even talk about right now about as they're molding into young adults and the whole different dynamic that comes into play with bullying. And now you have, you're in high school and they have cars and just more freedom and all the other dynamics. But just as a closing for this episode, because I now feel that this is going to be probably a 2 or 3 part series on bullying, which I didn't, when you said that before, I didn't really understand, but now I understand that there's different layers and different levels. And even though we covered and we're pretty broad about it, but junior high school, elementary school is going to be handled differently than junior high school. And junior high school is definitely going to be handled differently than high school. Because in high school, it's a whole different dynamic, because now you're dealing with kids, young adults that know right from wrong. And here's some final advice to parents if your children experience bullying. You and your child's first and most consistent advocate. Don't minimize their experience, even if it seems small to you. Partner with the school, but don't be afraid to escalate things if needed. Equip your children with the voice, confidence, and safe coping strategies. And remember, connection is the antidote to despair. Stay connected with your children. And any closing thoughts as we wrap up part 1 of anti-bullying?
Make sure that you're having the conversations with your children. And I know that I sound like a broken record because I've said this in the last probably 3 podcasts. But it's true. You're their parents. You are their advocates. You are their safe haven. You are their first teachers. You need to advocate for your kids, and you need to have those conversations with your kids. Don't ask them how their day was and leave it surface level and leave it at that. Because if you ask surface level questions, you're going to get surface level answers. Pay attention to your kids, pay attention to their behaviors, and talk to them. Investigate more about their days. And if they're smaller, great. That means you have an even more advanced opportunity to start teaching them, to start educating them, to start asking them those questions that they get used to. Because if you're having these conversations in junior high school and high school, it's too late. Now, I'm not saying for those parents who do have those kids in junior high and high school that it is too late. It's always the time. The time is now. But if they're in elementary school, this is the time where you need to start creating those safe spaces and let them know that your first line of defense is not going to be, we're immediately going to confrontation. It's creating a safe space. It's allowing them to openly talk about whatever it is that made them uncomfortable, that made them sad, whatever happened, even if they saw it and maybe they didn't experience it themselves. Investigate that. And let them know that you're not going to go right away to tell or without their permission. Maybe give them some permission of, okay, well, just so you know, we're going to work through this together. Instead of going right off through, we're going to go into confrontation, we're going to start isolating this, give the child a chance to just decompress from that experience, to be in that openness with you and help guide them and support them through that. But absolutely do not take any small thing for granted as something that's just small. Sometimes kids aren't just kids. There is some real bullying and emotional bullying going on.
And I'm just going to modify what you said, and I'm just going to add something to it. And that's going to be, maybe it's not your parents, because maybe the parents aren't present in their life. Maybe they have absent fathers or absent mothers, or their parents are so checked out on drugs or alcohol or relationships or other factors. Maybe they're checked out because they're working 2 or 3 jobs, which is something real that really happens. So this isn't just for parents, but it's also for uncles, aunts, siblings, grandparents. Be the voice. Be the voice. Create that safe, emotional container that your children, grandchildren, cousins, nephews, brothers, sisters can come to. And if all else fails, teach them a good right hook to punch the bully in the nose. And with that, have an amazing, thank you for joining us for another episode of Fatherhood Voices. Stay tuned for a part 2 that'll come up soon.
If you want to fight this out, then we can fight it right now.
Want my fist?
If you don't like the quality, then you put your camera on there. Because this will be going into the podcast. Okay. It'll be going in the end, it'll be going in the middle, it's going to cut through, it's going to do something.
Okay, so we just had basically
a fight,
a little bit of an argument off camera. And so, you know, your voices and concerns about me wanting to cut through the red tape and just deal with the issue of bullying in that moment and not have to worry about all the other obstacles that need to be dealt with. And then I get what you're saying about wanting to, well, what the fuck are you saying? I mean, let's just put it out there.
I was trying to help you, to guide you in the way that you're saying things, because now I'm not a parent, but as somebody who will have children later on, I would definitely have some concerns about you saying that you're going to bring random strangers onto my child's campus who are just...
Well, I didn't say on a campus. I said have them show up out front and in allegiance.
But what is out front? You need to clarify that.
Okay, out front. You know, when you drop a child off, is lining people up to say, hey, we stand with this victim of bullying and it's not going to happen anymore. It's no different than random people driving down the street. So I get what you're saying, and maybe it didn't come out, I didn't articulate the way that I wanted to, but no, I don't advocate for having strangers come onto campuses. But you're still bringing them into the area. And I was just saying to be more mindful and to explain before parents start getting upset, because even I would be upset if that was my kid or there's just random people. I think they should be more fucking upset that bullying's going on, that the fucking school's not doing anything about it. That's what I think they should be upset about. That, but what I'm saying is, but if someone's trying to create an initiative, to bring awareness to it, then you know what? Then so be it. Yes, but I'm saying, but you need to clarify, because when you say motorcycle clubs, are you talking about motorcycle gangs? Because some gangs are referred to as motorcycle clubs. So who are you bringing over here? And if we're going to do an initiative, then it needs to be carefully crafted where we actually do reach out to the motorcycle clubs who are actively doing this to say, what are you doing? How do we bring this over here? If they're being applauded, then that means they're doing it in a very tactful way where people are feeling safe. People are applauding this. People aren't arguing about this or wondering why there's all these random people around, which I get. I'm passionate about the bullying, but I'm also passionate about keeping children safe. And so maybe the way to rephrase it as mothers and fathers or men and women that just stand against bullying. So it doesn't have to be motorcycle clubs. It's just people that are going to stand in alliance.
All I was saying was be mindful about the way that it is presented.
And then here's the thing. This is the beautiful thing about having you on, because it's a different perspective. We're not going to agree on everything, and I get that, and that's why it was important to bring this back on the camera and have this conversation, or this. It's not even a fucking debate. It's just different perspectives, and that's okay, because there's no right or wrong. Because I'm more on the verge of, I'm more from a perspective of just want to cut through the red tape and just want to deal with the issue at hand. And I understand you're looking at it from the liability, from background check, and I get that, and thank you, because we need that balance. But I'm more, my philosophy these days, the way I approach business, the way I approach life is fire, aim, ready. Because in the past, when I've approached it from ready, aim, fire, it takes so long to put something into play that it's about making things happen now. And maybe that's where your balance comes in, your perspective. Say, hey, hold on a minute. Let's just take a look. Let's just kind of retool this whole thing. So thank you for being so passionate about it. And if I, shut you down earlier and silence you, it wasn't meant to be. It's just when I get passionate about something, I just want to execute it. I want to move on it.
Well, next time I'm not going to let you shut me down. I'm going to say, no, actually, we're going to talk about this.
And you know what? I welcome that, because that's what this is what Fatherhood Voices is about. It's about real, uncensored talk, not being censored. It's about being able to just speak your mind. And we can sit here and we can dabble on the politically correct way to say things. But no, that's not what fucking Fatherhood Voices is. Fatherhood Voices is about helping men and women heal the relationship with their children. And it comes in many dynamics, not just their relationship, but how they show up for their kids. And something off camera that came up is, well, let's just put it out there. I didn't show up for your two younger sisters when they were being bullied, especially one of them by a family friend. Okay? And I actually had completely forgotten about that till that was just brought up. So that stirred a whole series of emotions. And these are conversations that are going to come up that I'm going to have with your sister before the next episode.
My family friend's daughter?
Yeah. But just know that, I'm passionate about, wanting to make a change, about wanting to help parents make that connection, about wanting to protect them. And if it means I'm going to offend some people, oh, fucking well. They can choose not to participate. They can choose not to watch this. And I'm not, saying this because, I'm trying to create a dramatic reel or a dramatic piece for people to fucking view it or comment. I could give a shit. Okay. This is real talk. This is uncensored. And this is how I feel. This is just my opinion. Your opinion is your opinion. And this is what is making season 2 even more powerful, because they're different perspectives. Now, my way may not align with your way, because we're two different adults now. And that's okay. And feel free to speak your authenticity. Feel free to speak your piece. And I'm going to do the same. And like I said, if you feel like I'm shutting you down or I'm silencing you, then I just need you to raise up. I need you to raise up, because this isn't my podcast. This isn't your podcast. This is a podcast. This is everybody's podcast, because one day I'm not going to be here. And you're going to be
interrupted during the podcast.
So, what's that?
I'm going to be interrupted during the podcast.
Interrupted? And
when you try to glaze over or move past it.
And that's okay, because one day it's going to be somebody else. And like I said, these are just my views and these are your views. And they're not going to align with everybody. And I'm not, if I was looking to be passive and generic and try, no. This is just a perspective. Right or wrong, this is just my voice.
We gotta go.